Hello, folks. Welcome. Oops, my computer crashing in there. David Brannen here. Today, we're going to be talking about the age-old question, should you take a lump sum buyout from the insurance company on your approved long-term disability claim? This is question as old as time itself. It's one of the first questions people started asking me way back when I started working in this area of the law. So I've covered it a lot of times, but we're going to talk about it again today, and we'll go over some of the good, the bad, the ugly, things you should think about if you are considering this. Now, bear with me here. I'm going to share my screen. I should have had this set up already, but just bear with me. Share screen. There it is. There it is. There it is. Okay, here we go. So let's take a peek at this. There it is. This is just our website. This is an article. I wrote this article a long time ago. It says published in 2022, but I originally wrote this back in probably 2015, 2016, something like that, a long time ago. And I wrote the article because we do get a lot of calls about this. We also don't represent people in buyouts from an approved long-term disability claim. So we've eventually got smart and wrote that right here, this disclaimer, just to be clear on that. I'll explain why. But let's go through it. So what is a lump sum buyout? What are we talking about here? A lump sum buyout is different. This is not a situation where you've had a denial of your claim and you negotiate a settlement. That is something different. A lump sum buyout happens when you're on an approved LTD claim and you and the insurance company reach an agreement where in exchange for giving up your rights under the policy, they will pay you out a lump sum of money, one-time payment. That would include some amount of future months or years of pay. Normally with a long-term disability, it is a contract, and the insurance company contractually just has to pay you so much a month for the next number of years. In some situations, both sides agree that it would be it's mutually beneficial rather than for them just to keep paying you month to month for the next till you're 65, that they will instead make a one-time payment to you now that includes some amount of future years, usually, of payments in exchange for you signing off all rights under the contract. Now, that is essentially what a lump sum buyout is. These buyouts, by the nature of them, because of Supreme Court of Canada decisions, they are considered non-taxable income, even if your long-term disability benefits are taxable. Okay, so that is something to keep in mind. That's a benefit, I guess, if your long-term disability benefits are taxable, but you negotiate this buyout. The buyout itself, again, you'd want to get independent legal advice, but the way the Supreme Court of Canada has ruled on this, at least at the time of shooting this video, has been to say that these types of buyouts are not taxable as income. All right. Now, most major insurance companies will consider these buyouts, and that includes like the Manulifes, Great-West Lifes, Royal Bank Life, RBC Life, Blue Cross. A lot of them will consider these buyouts, but not for all policies. So, for example, if you have long-term disability benefits through the federal government's LTD plan, they will not do buyouts with that plan. That's just against their policy. But in other plans, depending on the group plan, these insurance companies will consider these buyouts at certain points. I would just say, like, we'll go through these points here, but there's usually two situations that can happen. The first situation is that you initiate the buyout discussion. So you contact the insurance company asking about a buyout. The other situation is the insurance company asks you. So who initiates it is very important, and very, very important who initiates it. In fact, in most cases, it's never worth I often argue against doing these buyouts, but even in situations where it does make sense to do it, it usually is because it's initiated by the insurance company and not you. So let's just think about this. So let's go with the idea that the insurance company is contacting you for a buyout. That is the most common situation. They've made an offer to you and you have to decide whether to take it. It's important to understand how the insurance company comes about creating the number that they're going to offer to you. And the important thing to know is they don't sit down and say, okay, you're getting this much a month. How many years, how many months? Oh, there's this many months until age 65. Let's multiply the monthly amount by the amount of months to age 65 equals this number. That's what we're going to pay them. That is not how it works. That is definitely not how it works. You will get a percentage of the future money. Now, the amount you get depends on a number of factors, but it can sometimes be quite high. Like you could get 80% of the future value. It can be low. They could be offering you like 30% of the future value. It really depends on your age, the amount of money involved, the nature of your illness, this kind of thing, and how desperate the insurance company is to get you off their books. So when calculating it, they do look at different things. They will look into your life expectancy. Is there anything that you have a lower life expectancy than normal? They'll look at the present value of your future benefits. So they just don't multiply like your benefits by time. They will look at what is the future value of these benefits. What is the present value of this future stream of income if it was paid out today? They will consider that. That is a lesser amount of money than if you were to just receive the entire amount. Sorry, I gotta turn off my notices here because it's very annoying. Okay. Oops, there we go. They'll also consider things like the yields of commercial bonds, the amount of reserves they've set aside for your claim. These are all things that they will consider when coming up with the number. The reserves, that refers to the money they've set aside for your benefits. By law in Canada, when insurance companies approve a disability claim for someone, they are required to set aside a certain amount of money into something like a trust fund that is not able to be used as part of the operating funds. They are required to do this in order so that if the company gets into financial trouble, they have money set aside to pay out these benefits that are owed to people. So what happens is when insurance companies have to divert money into these reserve accounts to cover active approved long-term disability claims, that money is not available to them for investments, for operations, and all that kind of thing. This will get you to why insurance companies often want to do buyouts is for whatever reason, they want to increase their operating cash. So the way it would work is they will look to do a buyout to you that is less than the amount of money that they have set aside in the reserves. So if they have, and a reserve just means it's a reserve in a bank account, okay? Not like the military reserves or anything like that. So the amount of money they have set aside in their trust account for your claim, let's just say that it's $500,000 and they're looking to do a buyout for you. They're not just going to give you the whole $500,000 because what would be the point? Their goal is to offer you an amount less than the $500,000 so they can take the remainder that's in that account and put it back into their operating cash money. So it looks like that it's new money. I'm not sure exactly how it's accounting for, but I think it comes in as new revenue, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So it would, but what I do know is that it would go back into money that they can now use for investments and operations. So if they were going to, if you had 500,000 in reserves, they had 500,000 reserves and they settle with you for 350, they would get the 150 that would go back to them. Okay. Now, if they do this if they settle enough cases, This way they can get millions of dollars. So this is why it's not realistic that they will just pay you out everything that they have on reserve, because there's no point for them to do that. I get there would be some point, I guess, they don't have to deal with the administrative hassle of your case, but there's the administrative burden on cases that are approved for long-term disability past the 2 years. That is going to be not a high burden anyway. So there's very little incentive for them just to close these cases out, other than to get money out of the reserves, in my opinion. I'd be happy for someone from the insurance industry to maybe set me straight, although a lot of them won't talk about this publicly. But that is my understanding. Now, I should point out that you are only going to get these offers for buyouts when you are well into your any occupation period. This is not something that is going to be brought up in the first 2 years, first 3 years. You need to be at a point where the insurance company is confident that they're going to be paying you to age 65, unless you were to pass away earlier, for them to offer a buyout, right? This is not for any contentious claim or where there's disputes. A lot of times people want a buyout because they're in a dispute with the insurer. They're sick of dealing with the insurer. Those are not times to get buyouts, because they have all the leverage and you don't. And so remember that the buyout is there. It has to be for the insurance company's best interest to do it. Usually when they're making offers for buyouts, I anticipate it's because for whatever reason, they want to get money into the business. And so that is when it makes sense for them to do some of these settlements. Okay. If they don't need money in the business for whatever reason this quarter, then they're not going to do buyouts, and they could do them or they could not do them. They don't really care. That's when you're going to get a worse deal on these buyouts than if the insurance company needs to raise, say, $5 million out of buyouts and they're having trouble meeting that target. They may be more interested in trying to give you a better deal just to get the money out if they're desperate for the money. So you just have to think who has the leverage here and who has the real interest to try to get the settlement. You want it to be them, because if it's just you that has the real interest to get the settlement, you're going to get a very poor offer from them. All right. Now, this part about letting the cat out of the bag, this is more if you are the one approaching them, which I don't recommend. I really don't recommend it. But again, everybody has their own personal situation. So there may be a situation where it makes sense for you to do it. Though most times when people contact me about this, I am finding myself convincing them not to do it. Where you need to you have to be very careful on how you phrase the reasoning of why you want to do this. You don't want to say things that are going to lead them to just cut your benefits off completely, because for example, I've had people say to me, well, I want to start a business that I'm going to be able to do. So I need this amount of money. So what I'm going to do is tell the insurance company that I want to start a business and that I want to get a lump sum buyout. I'm like, no, like that is a terrible thing to do. If you're saying you want to start a business, that sounds like you're able to work. So why would they even pay you anything if you're capable of working? That is the kind of thing where I would never tell the insurance company you want to do this to start a business, because again, it raises all kinds of questions about, do you have capacity to work? So that is just something that's going to trigger red flags. If you say something like that, they could end up cutting off your benefits, be believing that you're able to work. So be very careful about that. Often what I would say is, if you're doing buyouts and you're insisting on contacting the insurer to initiate it, I tell people, make sure you have your doctor's agreement. And so you would want your doctor to write a report that says this person continues to be totally disabled. They have advised me they might be seeking a buyout of the insurance policy, but I'm certifying that they continue to be unable to work. So if a lot of times if you approach the insurer, they will assume when you're approaching them that you want a buyout because you are going to be able to go work. That's why saying you're starting a business even pours more fuel on that fire. If they hear from you that you want a buyout, they start to wonder, maybe this person can work and we're going to look like fools. We're going to pay them out all this money. And then the next day they're going to go have a job somewhere. And we look like idiots for paying them out this money when we could have just cut them off. That is the fear. So to take that fear away from the insurance company, it helps for you to get a letter from your doctor setting out the reasons why you still are disabled, that you are the doctor doesn't have to go into this, but as long as the doctor confirms that you continue to be disabled and that you're following all medical advice, that is the main thing for the insurer. You want to have some reason to tell the insurer, and good reasons like that could be acceptable would be like you're trying to consolidate debts. There's something that it makes sense for you to pay off in a large sum of money now to give you a bigger benefit down the road than continuing to get this money for till age 65. Because ultimately, unless there's some like compelling reason, like you owe so much in interest on debts and things that you can now clear out, you are almost always going to be a better financial position to just take the money to 65 because you're not going to get the total amount. Especially like if you can even get offered lower amounts if your LTD benefits are taxable, they will often lower the money even more because they know you're getting tax-free money. So they're even not wanting to give you the benefit of the money that would have went to Revenue Canada. Like they're going to try to keep that portion. So just keep that in mind. Like it's not realistic to get a huge amount. Like you're not going to get 90% of the money unless you're in your late 60s or something like that and they're buying it out. But generally you're not going to get like 80% or more. Sometimes you do. I've seen people get that much, but it's usually the exception, not the rule. And usually it means there's not a lot of years of payments. For someone very young, it is very hard to get a large amount of the money because first of all, like if you're very young, by very young, I mean like in your 30s or so, like there's such a long time. Like you literally could die before age 65. So like they're thinking, why would we pay all this out? We're not going to pay you. They'll pay you a number of years, but it's not going to be the whole amount of the money. If you're very young, you might only get 50% or less of the money is an offer. So you have to like point through here. You have to figure out if it makes sense for you. I go through some of the things you want to think about here. If your health could improve, like if you know that maybe you are going to get back to work, you could try to get a lump sum payout, but I would still not frame it to the insurance company like that, especially if it's speculative on whether you would be able to work or not. But anyway, those are things to keep in mind. So we don't give advice on, we don't negotiate buyouts. We will offer to do independent legal advice. So if you do get a buyout and you come to a number with the insurance company that you're comfortable with, they do require you to have independent legal advice so that later on you can't come back and try to get the settlement undone. We do offer the independent legal advice in these situations. So you could contact us, and what we need to have is the offer, the release, details about your disability benefits so we can run numbers. Then we meet with you, go through the numbers, explain what percentage of the benefits you're getting. Does this make sense for your situation? Is it a low offer, a high offer? We give you all the pros and cons, and then we will sign a certificate that says that you have been given legal advice, and that's what you need for the insurance company. Most insurance companies will, will pay towards, they'll pay towards the cost. Usually will not cover the full cost. It might only cover half or less than the cost, but they will pay towards the cost of the independent legal advice. All right. Let me know if anyone has any questions about that. I'm going to remove that. Don't see any questions yet. It is a tough topic. People say, well, David, why don't you represent people in this? Because it has never gone well. I've never had a case where it went well, mostly because I'm strongly recommending that people don't do the settlement. So it's very hard for me to, if I'm recommending someone don't do this settlement, to then facilitate it and take a fee on it. It seems wrong to do that. And so I just decided it doesn't make sense for me to do these. I would rather than negotiate the settlement, I will do the independent legal advice, and people are paying for the advice, not for me to negotiate the settlement. Plus, like, there's not a lot of negotiating a lot of times in these situations. there's often just a band of money that they have available, and ultimately they will usually just say, "This is it, like take it or leave it." They might give you one improvement on the offer, but this is not a thing where it's going to be a long drawn out negotiation. They'll just say, "Yeah, that's our last offer, take it or leave it." A lot of times they are just like they have they have a goal of how much money they want to get, so they have many offers out there to different people. So if they get enough takers, they may not even care if they settle your case or not. If enough other people settle, they needed to get 1,000,000, 2,000,000, $3,000,000. They've already gotten it. They could care less if you settle or not. So they will just say, this is it. Now, if they're very desperate and they're not getting a lot of takers and they need to hit this money, then maybe they will come a little higher. They might be more open to negotiating further, but I wouldn't rely on that. That's probably less likely the case. The most times you would want a lawyer, I think, is if you're approaching them out of the blue. That makes the most sense to have a lawyer help you at that point. Now, we don't offer that, like I said, but that would make the most sense of when to have a lawyer to write to them and say, look, this person is thinking about this. We would like to negotiate a settlement on their behalf if you're open to it. Again, the insurance company doesn't have to be open to it, but that's kind of the thing. The last one of these that I did, I more or less did it as a favor. It was for a client that I got her LTD approved. But in the course of negotiating it, I really met with her and told her, look, I really don't want you to do this. I really don't want you to do this. And I basically I did convince her not to go ahead with it. Okay. I did not think it was in her best interests. Um, I couldn't in good faith do it. So that's what I did. I did it as more of a favor to like help her out because I broke my policy of not doing these, but she was a very good client. She was a very good client. And so I was like, you know what, maybe I'll break my rule and do it. But then we got into it and I really told her this is a bad idea. Like, I really don't think you should be doing this. And she took my advice ultimately and did not do it. So then again, I swore off again. I will never get involved in one of these again. And I'm going to stick with it this time. So, but that doesn't mean that I won't do the independent legal advice, which I have done a few of those this year already. I even get some of the insurance companies. It's hard to find lawyers to do the independent legal advice. So some of the insurance companies know that I do it. So they actually will tell people, oh, why don't you call Resolute, which is kind of funny. But the insurance companies don't hire us to do it. You have to come to us independently because we don't do work on behalf of the insurance companies just to maintain our credibility. Okay, well, let's have a look here and see if anything came in on the forum, the disability claim forum, over the long weekend. Okay, do we have anything new? Looks like not. How is that possible? Huh. What's going on? People are not. Yeah, it looks like nothing new. Okay. Nothing new on the forum. No questions coming in. That's just fine. I'm sure people are still chilling out after the long weekend. Let's see here. Yeah, very busy day. It's always busy coming back after such a break, like on this weekend. I did end up doing a lot of work over the weekend, mostly on like business related stuff. So today was quite hectic to get through, dealing with mostly things like filing lawsuits and things like that. I work from my home office most of the time, so I do. Whenever I have to sign something in ink, I usually have to go into the office, which is always a pain in the butt to do. So I had to go in and do some of that today. But other than that, I'm trying to think other things that were going on. Anything interesting for you guys? Probably not a lot. Probably not a lot. Just take a look here. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to leave it there. We got a quiet group this time, but that's fine. You don't always have to be asking questions. I'm going to just take the rest of the afternoon, take a little break because it's been a pretty hectic day. I got to do a little work this evening. I'll be back tomorrow for our final episode of the week, and then we'll be off again until next Monday. Wish you guys all the best. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a good one.